Hello and welcome to the Not Too Shabby Shop YouTube channel. My name is Lynn, or LV Handcrafted, and today I am going to make a double Dutch door card. I'm starting off with some heavyweight solid color cardstock. It's 100 pound, and I've cut it to 8.5 by 8 3/4. Along the 8.5 inch edge, what I'm going to do is a combination of cutting and scoring along the 2 1/8 inch line from both ends. So you'll see me do this on both sides. Again, I'm doing all of this with the 8.5 inch edge at the top against our scoreboard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure 2 1/4 inch up from the bottom of the edge of my piece of cardstock here. And I'm going to give myself a little pencil mark so I can trim from the top down to that pencil mark. And what I'll do to finish off is I'll score the rest of the way. So here I am on the opposite side, measuring 2 1/4 inch up from the bottom, cutting down to that pencil mark. And then what I'll do is pop this back into my scoreboard and just score the rest of the way down. So where we've got that cut line, which should line up at that 2 1/8 inch mark, I'm going to score the rest of the way. And what we'll do is at that 2 1/4 inch, if you turn your panel, so now the 8 3/4 inch is at the top, you can just trim away those excess pieces. Just line it up at that 2 1/4 mark. And then the final score line is going to be 5.5 inches from the bottom of your card. So when this card is folded, it's still going to measure USA 2 standard card. So that's 4 1/4 wide by 5.5 tall. But when you fold everything down, your card front is going to have 3 flaps. A top flap that measures 4 1/4 wide by 3 1/4 tall, and then 2 gatefold flaps that open to the sides, and those measure 2 1/8 inch wide by 2 1/4 inch tall. And today I am using the March box of the month. I've chosen this stamp set with this adorable frog and lily pad. I've colored up some of the images, not all of them, but I've also chosen some papers that come with the box of the month as well. And so I'm going to line the inside of the card with this gorgeous pattern. Really, really love that. You could also, on top of this, add maybe a white panel that's a little bit smaller if you wanted to stamp an inside sentiment and leave a little bit of space to write a message. Or you can always stamp and write your message on the back of this card if you didn't want to disrupt the design aesthetic of the card front. And then I've just cut down a couple of other pattern papers to use as my mats and layers on each of the 3 flaps on the front of the card. And I measured this one incorrectly, so I had to recut that. You do want to make sure that, so I'm using a solid color cardstock for my card base, but this is a heavyweight cardstock. It's a 100-pound cover weight, so it's nice and sturdy. So whatever you're using as your card base, whether it's white cardstock or solid color cardstock, do make sure that it's a nice heavyweight cardstock so that this stands up really nicely. And so with this method of creating the double Dutch door, I have my entire card base cut from one large panel. If you want to see a different method of putting together this exact same style of card, but not cutting it out of such a large piece, I'll have another video. I thought about a different way of doing this, so I'll have another video on my YouTube channel, LV Handcrafted, a little bit later this month. So stay tuned for that. I think it'll be a slightly easier way to create this, but also if you didn't want, because this method, it does produce a couple of scraps because we had to trim off some sections of the colored card base. So with the second method that I'm noodling in my head, I don't think you'll have scraps generated in the same way. So stay tuned for that if you just want to see a different way of putting one of these cards together. So what I did is I took a nice scallop circle, a really nice good size one too, because this is going to be the backdrop for my frog. And I love the size of this frog. I feel like it's a really good size for a focal image where you don't really need too much else. And that's why I didn't color up too many additional images. I've just got the lily pad, which will help to ground my frog. And I've got one of the water lilies as well, just because I feel like if I'm doing a grouping, it needs to be an odd number of elements. And so that's going to be my third element as part of this little collage I'm building up. I've attached some low profile foam to the back of my frog. I love working with low profile foam because it adds just that bit of dimension so that your die cut element or ephemera, if you're using ephemera, it just stands out from the base of the card just a little bit, and it'll provide that little bit of dimension, but it's not going to trigger extra postage because it's only 1 millimeter thick. And even if you used multiple pieces of foam and wanted to stack multiple layers, you could do maybe 2 or 3 and it still wouldn't be super, super thick. So I love having that option as well. I took the same scallop circle die and I just did a little bit of a partial die cut to get the bottom because I want to cover the back here, since that the water pattern that I used, all of the pattern papers in the Not Too Shabby paper pads are lovely and double-sided. So just to clean up the backside of this a little bit, I did a partial die cut of the exact same solid color cardstock that I used for my card base, and just attached that to the underside. And that not only makes the bottom portion of the circle die cut that hangs off of that top flap, it makes that a little bit more sturdy so that it can rest on the bottom 2 gates, but also it tidies up that inside in case anyone were to actually look behind there. And my finishing step here will be to add a sentiment. Sentiments are always the last thing I think about, and so I'm glad that there's a lot of room on these bottom gates that have ample opportunity for you to place a sentiment. And so I've just taken a banner die. This is actually from the CC Designs, ACC Designs die set. At the moment, I can't remember exactly which one it's a part of, but I did pick 2 of the sentiment stamps from this very same stamp set that the frog came from, so that the sentiment reads "Happy Birthday," which I thought was really funny. And so I'll go ahead and die cut that. And I did have one little extra stamp image that I already colored up, so I thought that might be a nice accent to my sentiment banner. And I ended up doing this twice because I wanted to reduce the gap between the word hoppy, and the word birthday. So I did end up creating this sentiment banner a second time. But I love this banner because it's a good size, and it does have that double fishtail end. So it's a nice little detail. And it is wide, as you can see. So it's wider than the 2 1/8 inch width of the gate. And you'll see when I go to attach it that won't be a problem at all. So you do have a lot of different options for how you want to dress up the bottom area of this double Dutch door card. You don't have to strictly stay confined to the size of those bottom 2 flaps. So I've restamped my image, and because I'm using VersaFine ink, which is my favorite black ink for sentiments because it's just so dark, you only need to stamp the one time. I often find I don't even need a stamp positioning tool because I always get such a crisp impression. But I did go ahead and clear heat emboss this just so that I don't accidentally smear that sentiment. Since VersaFine ink is a pigment ink, it does take a moment to dry. But if you're in a rush or you just don't want to wait, you can always clear heat emboss it like I've done. And because I already had that second banner stamped and die cut, I just went ahead and attached it to this one. And I think in any case, that's a good idea to do, because what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to only attach this banner to one of the gates. So you see I'm applying liquid adhesive to just half of the banner. And I'll attach it to, in this case, the left banner. You could do it either way, whatever your personal preference is. And that way the gate can still open, but you can still have a nice large sentiment banner that stretches across both gates if you wanted. Just make sure you're not gluing the gates shut so that they don't close. So if you're attaching something that's larger or wider than the gate, just be sure to only attach it to one gate. And you can see the card stands beautifully. It will rest, and that's why I hung the die cut a little bit lower than that top flap so that it can rest on the bottom 2 gates. I hope that you enjoyed this double Dutch door card that features the March 2023 box of the month. And again, if you want to see a different way of putting this together, I'll post a separate video on my YouTube channel, LV Handcrafted, later this month. Thanks for checking this out, and here are a couple more videos you might enjoy. Have a fantastic day. Bye.